to Think About It, where you can daily, digitally come in and check in with me for a thought and an update, all from a biblical worldview and all in under 3 minutes. Today's Saturday, and your thought and update comes in the next 3 minutes right now. We're seeing a lot of new things in this season of unprecedented times. Over the last week, we've seen how churches have been receiving $500 fines for having drive-through services. Weekly jobless claims have now hit over 5 million, bringing the total over the last 4 weeks to 22 million people out of work. And as many people are feeling the economic stress and struggling with all the policies in place, multiple states have seen protests where their citizens are speaking out against the government authorities and their stay-at-home orders. But while the world seems to be struggling with all the implications of the virus, it seems that our country here in America is really being challenged with some questions. Who's in charge? What rights do we have? What's our best course of action going forward? And while there's arguments on both sides of all those issues, it's important that the Christian understand a biblical worldview in light of all of it. There are two main truths that we see in the Bible when it comes to government. The very first one, we see that government is not the source of our rights. But on the second side, we also see that government plays a very important role in protecting our rights. When we think about number one, we defend that government should be limited, that our rights should reign supreme. When we think about the second truth, we realize that our default position should be to obey. Let's consider how Paul teaches us that in Romans 13. Right at the very beginning, verse 1, Paul says that everyone should be subject to the governing authorities. There is no authority except that which God establishes. Paul goes on to teach that those in power are to exercise that power in two ways. One is to do good, and the second one is to bring punishment and bring justice. His conclusion in verse 7 is simple. Give to everyone what you owe. If you owe them taxes, pay taxes. If you owe them money, pay money. If you owe them respect, respect. If you owe them honor, then give honor. Now, of course, we understand that disobedience is appropriate in some circumstances. Daniel 3 and Acts chapter 4 show us two examples as to how God's people need to speak up, even when the leaders are going with something different. But while the people in those stories were separated by 600 years, they had one thing in common. They cared about their witness and the glory of God more than anything else. Paul encourages Timothy in 1 Timothy with a similar truth. 1 Timothy 2, verses 1, 2, and 3. I urge then, first of all, that petitions, prayers, intercession, thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings and all those who are in authority, that we may live a peaceful and a quiet life in godliness and holiness. This is good, he says, and it pleases our Savior. So while Christians may struggle in the future with when and when not we need to speak up against our leaders, one thing we don't have to question is that we need to pray for our leaders. And it seems to me that if prayer was our go-to, and if our witness was our top priority, then we can trust that God is going to give us the discernment of when we need to be loud, but how we can always be quiet, so that the gospel can be heard and that Jesus can be fully displayed. Think about it.